My name is Angie McLeod. I am the lead conversation starter here at HIP Strategic Consulting, and I'm really excited to be doing this today. It's one of the first ones that I'm actually recording, so it's kind of nice to be out here doing it and stretching my comfort zone.
Awesome.
Sherilyn, what about yourself?
I'm just interested to kind of kickstart my life, my year.
Excellent.
So I think I'm feeling the January pressure of making plans and getting aligned and figuring out what my focuses should be this year.
Excellent. Well, hopefully this will help. It'll help you sort of focus in on those things that you're passionate about, and maybe we'll explore and challenge some of our assumptions about passion and motivation. So I'm so glad you could just be aware that because I'm marketing it and using it from a marketing purpose, it will be shared. So just keep that in mind. Group guidelines, things from a group guideline perspective as well are that there's got to be time for all of us to talk. So we need to just be aware, and as the group grows, more people come on board, then we need to think about that. Okay, so first question. Let's talk a little bit about passion. So what are you passionate about in your business? And I was reflecting on this question earlier today as I was prepping for the session and thinking about what does passion really mean to me? I know as a society, we talk a lot about passion being follow your passion, do what you love, and all of that stuff. But then I watched a video the other day by a woman. She was talking a lot about, though, and I will post up this link in Facebook group, but she was talking about, we're told to follow our passion in life, but how many of us actually know what our passion is? And she says the way it's stated and the way it's framed in our world is that we're passionate about one thing. And her journey has led her to believe that it's not that we're passionate about one thing and that we follow our passion, but that we create our passion as we go. And when I think about this and I reflect on this question, it's actually made me pause to think about what am I passionate about in my business, and are those things that I knew at the beginning, or were they things that I developed over time? And I have to say that I kind of agree with her that what I'm passionate about, I've developed over time. It's not that I knew when I started what I was going to be passionate about, but I kind of figured it out as I went. What do you think about that, Sherilyn?
Yeah, I think there's something about spending time and actually, like, whether it's connecting with a person or connecting with a thought, that the more time you spend with that, the more connected you are to that, and that builds the passion.
Right. Yes.
So I think there is something about just that sharing of space or sharing of exploring it. Like if it's a thought, it's something that you're spending time thinking about.
Right. Yeah. And so what was interesting for me, because really our society has taught us that, figure out your passion and go for it. Whereas what both you and I are saying now is that maybe it's not about figuring it out at the beginning, but sort of working our way through it and starting to follow the linkages of what we're enjoying. Right, as things begin to connect for us, and building our passion, and then doing more of that within our business or in our life.
Right.
So one of the questions I often ask myself is what is it in my business that keeps me energized? What is it that I keep coming back to? Throughout my life, if I were to look back though over the last 20 years, what are the core components that have kept sort of filtering their way in without me realizing, but they just kept showing up and that I enjoyed? So I was looking for them, maybe not consciously, but they kept showing back up. And one of them for me is facilitation. I didn't set out to be a facilitator. I didn't even know that it was a job, or that I could make it, that people would pay me to talk and get other people talking. That just seems very obscure. My father get a hoot out of that, right? He does every time I tell him what I do. But, when you think about how did that come that that's what I do now for a living, it wasn't about having a very clear defined path that this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to get there. It was this really weird, wacky path to get there. Now, what about yourself, Sherilyn? Because you're doing work that you love as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I find that I sort of, I don't know, it feels like I sort of get off my path a little bit and then I'm reminded, oh, why do I like this? Or what did I like doing? And then I come back on. But I do find that I am a very wandering pathway. Like you said, it's not a straight, oh, I'm going to do this, done, and just do it. It's very exploratory.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I do wander and exploring ideas. So, and then sometimes I do get back to like, what do I actually like doing within that? Like, do I like what groups of people do I like working with? Or why did I like that experience more than the other one? And
Exactly.
those things are a little bit fuzzier for me. So it, translating what I liked doesn't translate to a job definition or yeah, I guess a job definition. It translates to like an experience. So I'm still trying to map out those experiences into a business, into a like a business that's kind of running on its own. Because right now it's very dependent on me.
For sure. For sure. And I think that many of us, as we're figuring that out, Sherilyn, because I certainly have the same thing, my business is very dependent on me. But I think that the other thing that happens when we're following our passion, particularly in business, is that we're crafting work on an overall basis that appeals to us. So we're not saying we have to fit this box. We're saying, how do I get more of what I want? So I'm creating this sphere that's exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whereas if I were to try to fit into the box of a job description, I'd probably find things that I really loved about it, but there'd be other pieces that I really struggled with. And so that's one of the things that I love, and why I'm passionate about being an entrepreneur is because I can create my work the way I want it and follow those linkages without having to worry about, oh, I've hit a wall, I can't do that. I can say, oh yeah, no, I can do that. Right.
Right.
So for me, that's one of the main reasons that I love being an entrepreneur, being able to follow the roots.
Yeah, and have that creativity.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this particular sort of topic?
No, I think that I do think the creative and the flexibility is a very attractive piece of entrepreneurship for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, I would agree. Okay. So we've talked a lot about sort of following the passions, and we've talked a little bit about what happens when we follow those passions. But when we're following our passions, I don't know about you, but if I'm doing the stuff that I love, so when I was facilitating the other day, I was facilitating for a local nonprofit, and we were doing mission, vision, and values work. And it was really interesting because I came out of the session, we'd really done a great job of pulling it all together, really refining their vision, their mission, and their values, and coming to a point where they were really proud of the work they'd done, and they deserve to be very proud of the work they'd done. But I walked out of there like I was walking on air. I was so excited, so happy with what I do, and just walked out of there going, yes, this is why I do what I do. And so the question I have here is, when we focus on what we're passionate about, what happens? So have you got a similar situation, Sherilyn, when you do work and it really just resonates for you and you go, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I think I have that feeling when a client has an epiphany. So I do a lot of sort of personal development and empowering work one-on-one.
Right.
And so when that client, I can sort of watch them experience and have the shift or the epiphany
Mm-hmm.
and then realize it, that's where I like, that feels powerful, and it's also highly emotional for the person who's experiencing the shift. So the combination of like their heightened experience and being able to witness it, it's very, that's where my zen comes from. I like that.
I like that. My zen. I like that term. Yeah. And so do you find that what you're trying to do is create more of that zen within your work?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to create more of that zen, so that more clients can experience it.
Mm-hmm. So for you, it's also about being of service.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Okay. Because one of the things that I'm discovering as I'm thinking about these things is that my passions are very closely tied to my values.
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm passionate like you about being of service, of helping other people grow and learn and do those things. And so I get excited when I can help an individual or an organization achieve what they were setting out to do and go, yes, we've done it. We're really excited about what we've done. And, but that's because I love being of service. So it's one of those pieces of where are our passions linked to what's most important to us, to our values? And that's a question I think we also need to ask ourselves when we're really looking at how does this look within the scope of trying to follow those linkages that you spoke of. How do we make that work?
Mm-hmm.
So when you focus on what you're passionate about, what happens for you other than the Zen? Is there anything else that comes out of that?
I do think new opportunities or new ideas or new things kind of happen, like things start to come together. I think there's some I don't know what the word is, like that if I follow an idea which is in alignment for me, then other things start to align as well that I may not have noticed before.
I think that, again, finding those places where we can focus in on what's getting us excited, what's really driving us. And I know that for myself, again, that passion feeds me. So it helps me stay motivated, helps me keep moving, which moves us on to the next slide, which is talking about what we're not passionate about. Now, I don't know about you, but there's certain things in my business that I just abhor doing.
Right.
I'm very much a people person, and I very much like the creative aspect of my business, the marketing, the coming up with programs, the doing this kind of stuff. But as I sit and I look at my bookkeeping pile and my filing pile, they're not so exciting.
Right, that's fair.
Is there something in your business that you find that you're not so excited about?
I think, well, no, definitely the bookkeeping and the kind of have to do's tasks. Yeah. I do struggle with, but because they're very, very defined, I find them easier to do than something that's more open-ended, like cold calling or prospecting.
Right.
So that probably would be my hardest. I'm more of an introvert, so that part would be my hardest part. But once I have the person in front of me, I'm fine. So yes. I like talking to the person. It's just doing the prospecting I find very difficult.
So making those initial personal relationships for the cold calling. And I'm with you on that. It's like you, I'm a bit of an introvert, although most people wouldn't see that when they met me. But I'm quite happy just doing my internal stuff, thinking, going into my brain.
Right.
And so for me too, the cold calling, the going out and prospecting, talking to people, saying, how do we make this happen? It's not easy, right? So, right. But yet there's a part of our business that we need to do. So how do we make that happen? What is it that we can do to make that so that we're still getting it done? So what do you do to manage those things within your business?
I guess a little bit. It's breaking it down into smaller pieces so that I actually know, like I have something that I can deliver on. Like right. Whether or not it's doing research or because if I leave it as one big bucket of I should make more connections, then that sort of just stays on my to-do list forever.
Right.
So yeah, breaking it into pieces where there's something I can deliver in the day. Like, okay, this morning I'm going to do X, yes. So that it actually gets done, because there is satisfaction to knowing that it got done. Right. When you pushed through the fear factor, I do feel that. Like I definitely feel it when it's done.
Yes.
Procrastinating is also one of my favorite things to do, but once it's done, there is definitely enough of a reward of relief or joy that can keep me moving.
Yes. Now, my technique has been slightly different than yours. I recognized very early on that I would never do my bookkeeping, and I would probably never do my filing.
So
So
it's
now
been
I am
partners.
blessed,
Yeah.
admittedly, with a mother who's an accountant.
Oh,
Yeah. So we made a deal very early on that I would help her with her marketing and her accounting company because it's not something she liked to do. And she would do my bookkeeping, and my, do all my year end and stuff, and actually bring me back my files actually with everything organized. So the only thing filing I'm responsible is client files, and those I need to keep organized because I'm working with those people. So
right.
that's easy for me to do. But the day-to-day sort of, I've got to file these receipts. That's
Right.
something that my only job is to get them into a particular spot in my inbox. She then comes and picks them up and takes them and does them. And man, does that make things easier.
Right.
Now, I am very blessed as well that she's done it for the last, I've been in business for 15 years and she's done it for the last 15 years. She retired about 5 years ago and continued to do it for me. However, this year, she's basically saying, nope, you need somebody new this year. So it's like, oh, but it was working so well.
Yay.
So I think sometimes it's really being honest with yourself too about what you will do. I knew straight out, I know how to do bookkeeping. I know I can do it. I do my invoicing myself because there's a motivation there. Like there's a motivation. I want to get paid. So I do my invoicing myself, but and I pay my bills myself, but the actual putting everything into the bookkeeping system is not something I want to do. So it's recognizing where you will really truly get stuck and what pieces of it you can do yourself, I think, for me, and then saying, what can I delegate? So I don't know, is there any piece of your business that you delegate out, Sherilyn?
Bookkeeping and taxes and all that probably should be the first thing that I do. I still do that myself, but
Right.
I think that's one thing that I could easily find support for.
Right.
There's some I do work with horses, and so there's a lot of like physical labor work.
Yes.
That I probably could benefit from. It wouldn't be a high cost kind of job, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, I also feel like I'm not like it's that breaking point of like, when do I hire and do I keep doing it myself because I'm still building?
Right.
I still am struggling with when is my tipping point.
Right. Yeah. So here's another question to consider with that, because every entrepreneur I know struggles with that piece. And I've learned two things. A, can I barter? And that has worked very effectively. And we barter at traditional rates. So I'm going to barter my services at my rate and somebody else's services at their rate. So we're both getting what we expect from the barter. It's not that we're trying to undercut each other.
Right.
So one is bartering. Can you do that somehow, some way, so that you can pay attention to those things that you really are passionate about and that will help you grow your business? So if I spent time doing my bookkeeping, the amount of time that I would spend thinking I was doing my bookkeeping but getting distracted because I really didn't want to do it would mean that that's, say, 5 hours a week that I'm not doing what I am really good at doing. And so sometimes you have to look at, if I invest this money for somebody else to do this, that gives me 5 more hours to do whatever it is that I need to do that I am passionate about, that will really truly help me grow my business. So also evaluating that component, I think, is really important. Being able to say, how could I use that time differently to help me grow my business? And is it worth the investment, even though I don't necessarily have the money? And if I don't necessarily have the money, how can I get creative about getting that done through bartering or through whatever? What kind of plans can we come up with to make it happen? So I think that sometimes being creative about meeting the need doesn't have to be the traditional ways. There are other ways that we can do it as well.
Right. No, that definitely makes sense, because the goal would be to alleviate those hours, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I found that to be extremely beneficial. And because also when I'm growing my business, so for example, I work with a social media person, and I pay her to do the work, but she does things that I know that I wouldn't do. So I have a difficulty promoting myself. She has absolutely no problem. So it's kind of neat because she can do the marketing under my brand, and it helps us both, right? She's getting some work. I'm getting my brand built in ways that I probably wouldn't do because I'm not wanting to do that extra push
on that. Yeah.
Right, because it's separate. So sometimes it's because that's where I know I'm getting stuck of promoting myself, then somebody else can do it. Last year, I got a call from a woman who was talking about, she wanted to know if I wanted to meet with a speaking coach. And it was a cold call. And what was really interesting to me, it wasn't the woman, the speaking coach who was calling me. She'd hired somebody to do her prospecting. And I thought, wow. And I actually followed up with her, and the speaking coach got the job. So it was really interesting because, again, here's somebody looking at things creatively and saying, well, I don't like this component. Can I get somebody else to do it?
Right, right.
And she was basically just saying she'd like to get together with you to have coffee, to talk a little bit about your business and see where you want to go from a speaking perspective. And I thought, oh, okay. It was pretty.
It's worth, yeah.
Yeah.
The chat.
Yeah, it was easy to do. So all of a sudden now I'm in her funnel and she's building up. So it was a really effective way for her to do it. So she'd done a little bit of homework. She had her person call me. We set up a time. We went ahead and eventually came together to say, okay, let's do some work together. And then we'll take it from there. So there are different ways, even for that prospecting piece of, we don't have to do it ourselves.
Right, right.
We just need to figure out what piece of it. And again, can you barter? How do you make that happen? Is there something that you can do for them to help them grow their business?
Right, and have an exchange.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, any other thoughts on sort of this question around how do we do things that we're not passionate about, making sure that they happen?
No, I think that that definitely the internal struggle is the letting go and planning and then making the decision on what those pieces are, for sure.
For sure. And I think that raises another really good point. I went through 3 social media people before I found one that I really, really trusted.
Good point.
So for the first 2, I struggled because I was micromanaging them. I was basically saying, here's what I want you to post. And the only thing I wasn't doing was posting it.
Oh, I see.
So
that didn't save you much.
It didn't save me any time, and yet I was paying these ladies to do this. And so I had to take a step back and recognize my own issue within the system and saying, I'm micromanaging. I'm not trusting them to do. So what do I need to do to get a person who I felt comfortable knowing that they could reflect my brand effectively without me having to do all the work? And then put into systems in place so that I could still approve the posts, but she would propose, this is what I think we should do. So we came up with a framework and we said, this is what this looks like. And we worked within that. So again, figuring out where are you getting stuck within that system if you're going to pass it off, where's your sticky point? Because I want my brand to look in a particular way. I want my brand to have a certain message. So that's a big piece of finding somebody who can reflect that and understand who you are, if that makes any sense.
Right. And having that clear plan definitely keeps everybody clear on what's going on, and then trust is established. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. We actually came up with a style guide and a content guide and a brand guide. So within those 3 systems, we were able to say, this is the kind of stuff that we do. These are the kinds of things that we want to utilize. And that really helped, because then I could say, okay, here's your framework.
Right.
Let it go. So yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
But yes, trying to figure out which pieces you're willing to let go of. And I always start at the bottom of the list. What's that thing that keeps ending up at the bottom of my list?
Right.
Right.
The one that gets put off the most.
Yeah. So because that's also, there's, for me anyways, when I keep putting something off, there's a sense of I'm not doing my job.
Right. Things are
that
getting
makes
behind.
me feel smaller. And as I feel smaller, I don't want to do it because, well, I'm not going to, right? Like it just keeps getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And then it's almost like, how do I eat the elephant?
Right.
Right. So sometimes it's just, okay, I'm going to give you the elephant. You work your way through it.
Right.
Because it's what you like doing. And that's the other thing, is to find people who are truly passionate about that piece that you're not. My mom loves numbers. She loves bookkeeping. She loves the making things fit within the box. And I'm all about, let's break the box. So
Right.
they, when it comes to bookkeeping, it makes sense to pass it over to somebody who likes to put things in the right boxes. And I'm like, oh, that box? No, let's try it over here and see what happens. That's not always a good thing when it comes to books.
No, but not, I can see that.
Yeah. So I think that there's also trying to find those people who are truly passionate about pieces you're not, which again takes getting out there, making calls, talking to people, figuring that out. Okay.
Yeah, finding the right match.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about this one as well, where our conversation is flowing quite beautifully this way. How can we structure our business to build upon our passion for certain things while still getting the other pieces done? So again, how do we do more of what we love while getting those things that have to get done that we don't want to do done? So any other thoughts on this? Like we've talked about it quite a bit.
No, I guess the only thing is that there probably, even once I hand over some things like to different experts, then there's probably still some things that I have to do that I don't absolutely love. And
Yes.
then maybe just building the structure on, okay, so Friday morning I do whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
My cold calls on Friday mornings.
Yeah.
So then I know it's got a time and a place, and I don't keep deferring it. Maybe that's my point. So to prevent the deferring of doing those things.
Yes. And when you're thinking about cold calls too, you need to think about when is the best time to call them. So I naturally, like you, I think probably put those things I don't want to do either. I get them done first thing Monday morning or Friday. But the question I have is, if we do it on Friday, that's the day when many people are actually out of the office.
Right.
So is Friday the best day to do it? So looking at things and saying, because if I make the phone call and I have to leave them a message and they don't phone me back, then
it's the weekend. Yeah.
It's the weekend, and then you have to go through the whole process again. Whereas if we scheduled it for Wednesday when many people are in the office or are working, then it might be, we might get them on that first call and then break that first barrier, which really is the hard one, to start the conversation. But if we time it right and we get them when we call, it's a whole lot easier.
Right. Then that makes sense.
Right. The other thing too, when it comes to cold calling and prospecting, do you do much networking?
I actually don't at the moment. Probably I've fallen away from that. So that's probably another area.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Can I ask why you've fallen away from that?
I think I'm in a shift of what my ideal client is. And so I would be attending different networking.
Good.
And a little bit, I'm debating whether my networking circle needs to be larger. Like if I'm staying in the local community, or I should be going into like Vancouver.
Right.
So probably there's a little bit of, I feel like I'm in a transition and I haven't fully stepped in or defined all that yet.
Okay. And that's actually a positive thing, because you're taking the time to figure out, where do I need to be? Now, I know there's a lot of people who just go to every single networking event they can possibly do. And I don't know how effective that is. And I too have sort of pulled back on the networking, because for the most part, the majority of my clients I'm not connecting with through networking. I'm connecting with them through referrals. So, and looking at what method is working for you is really important. So networking in the traditional sense of going to a chamber of commerce, there's a lot of great value to that. But what I'm finding is that sometimes it's showing up at things like the Wine Fest. For me, I work primarily with nonprofits. So showing up at the Wine Fest, showing up at different like galas, those kinds of things are where I've built a solid foundation where lots of people know me at this point. But showing up at those key events now is much more effective than showing up at the day-to-day networking events.
I see. Right. Because you're more reconnecting with those connections that you've built.
So figuring out, again, I think you're exactly on target when you say, I need to figure out where my people are and go to those places.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And so you might be looking at, if you're based on what I know of your company, it might be more of a case of going to sort of corporate events or team building things or communication conferences, that kind of thing, and doing things differently, right?
Yeah.
So, and the other piece for me, when it comes, again, we're sort of flipping over to a marketing conversation here, but I do think it's important, because I think sometimes if we shift our perspective slightly to exactly what you're doing within your business and sort of realigning, what happens within that is that as you start to target, you can also say, okay, how else can I reach these people? How else can I get the information out? And so for me, when I start to think about what are the ideas I have for connecting with people, this is one example, is I'm not out networking, but as I do more and more of these, people will start to follow me, and then my information will get out to more and more people, and they're self-selecting. So figuring out what are the pieces that you can do from a prospecting, cold calling perspective, that maybe it's not about that, but maybe it's about educating or moving things forward.
Right.
Right.
For sure.
So, because I would think there's a fair chunk of education within the pieces that you're doing to get people aware of how working with horses can help you develop on a personal level. So,
yeah, for sure. That is a big component. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that that's really important. So, when we're structuring our business, we want to build on the passion that we have for things, but we also need to get the other pieces done. But there's nothing saying we have to do it in a traditional way. One of the things you mentioned, the word creativity at the very beginning. And I really think that when we're trying to find solutions to those pieces where we're stuck, that we need to say, how can I make this work for me in a way that feels comfortable?
Right.
So that we will actually do it. So it's not always about doing the traditional networking. How else can we network? What else does that look like? So, okay. So any other questions or thoughts on how passion equals motivation? Like, are you beginning to see that the things that you're excited about, you're passionate about, are the things that you spend your time on, and those things that you're not excited about are the things that you're not motivated around? So are you seeing the link between the two?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other sort of components in there that you think are important for us to sort of touch base on? Or any other questions?
No, just that I guess once that motivation comes, then it's easier to kind of keep going.
Yes.
There's a momentum, and that momentum gets stronger, and then it's easier to go through your challenges.
For sure.
Because there's some there's some force or direction there.
Yeah. I would agree that, it's like the snowball effect. You start going and you start going, and then things start to grow. And the more you're passionate about people, the more you attract people as well, right? So the more you're passionate about what you're doing, the more people who want to come and say, hey, what gets you so excited? Why are you so enthusiastic? I need some of this. So it attracts people.
Exactly.
And I think that's important as well. So, not saying you don't do those things that don't get you excited, but you figure out strategies to get those things done, I think.
Exactly. So it's also not a drain.
Yeah. Yeah, because we want to be in that positive place as often as we possibly can. Perfect. So the last thing I want to just quickly talk about is this kind of conversation is the kind of thing we will be doing in the 10-week Align Lab. And Sherilyn, I know you're already signed up, and I'm really excited to get started with you. And in this 10-week Align Lab, we are going to be looking at how do we define our version of wildly successful on your own terms. And it's going to be conversations like the one we've just had, that Sherilyn and I have just had, with a larger group, that are going to bring us to understanding who we are and how we create our version of wildly successful. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please check out the hipstrategic.com Align Lab tab on my website. Give me a call or just touch base. And if people are interested in seeing more about what it's about and whether it's a good fit for them, let's talk. Anyways, thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to connecting soon. My name again is Angie McLeod from Hip Strategic, and I hope you've enjoyed this session.